I think that the biggest myth, specifically in our industry, is that filtration can equal disinfection. So you see a lot of people looking to address a problem where something has to pass over a filter in an HVAC system, and the environment is changing very rapidly. So ours goes forward. It's not something that has to be cycled back through the HVAC and back into the building as this cleaned and magic, air that's coming out of the HVAC. It's something that's continuously addressed, both in the air and on surfaces. And so that's our biggest challenge, is that the regulatory market is shifting rapidly towards this kind of treatment. Because the misunderstanding is that heavy filtration and those types of things that are kind of, level one use case in an HVAC system are the answer. And we think that they're great, they're components of it, and they're obviously work for large particulates. But we think that you can build a system that's multi-tiered and addresses multiple different levels of indoor spaces.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where I help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Matt Horine. And Matt, we're going to be talking about a few different areas of expertise, including the importance of indoor air quality and how you can manage that. And a little bit broader, also talking about operations and organizational structures and manufacturing and how to deal with manufacturing as the product evolves, and also if or when to pivot with your products, and a little bit talking about the ever-present COVID, but also how that can be leveraged when things change to expand the product line, and it should lead to some great conversations. And so with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Matt.
Yeah, hi Devin, thanks for having me back on, and excited to get to chat about those things.
Absolutely. So now before we dive into a lot of the topics at hand, just as a quick reminder to the audience, and so we had Matt on to the previous or the sister podcast, which is the Inventive Journey. So if you haven't had a chance to go catch his full journey, definitely make sure to go do that. But for those that haven't had a chance to catch that episode, give us just a minute or two, just a quick introduction to the audience about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Matt Horine with Casper Technologies. I'm the COO of a company that does, the acronym is Continuous Air and Surface Pathogen Reduction. So in indoor air quality, which is very adjacent to HVAC and all things, kind of involved in a building and keeping it clean. Prior to that, I've worked in several technology businesses and marketplace concepts, setting up essentially startups and go-to-market strategies in those, and previously was in the U.S. military. I was in the Army for a couple of years prior to starting my career. Native Texan, went to school here, Texas Longhorn, and I live in the Dallas area now. So I've been with Casper Tech for over a year. It's an exciting time to be in the industry, and we're doing a lot of things on the innovation front. So very excited to talk about that today.
Awesome. Well, definitely some great introduction, and then some great areas to hit on. And so one of the things that you'd mentioned, and then we'll expand out or broaden out a bit, but you're certainly within the indoor air quality arena, and doing a lot of work on that now. For a lot of people, you think about outdoor air quality, or if it's smoggy, or if it's pollen seeds and all of those type of things, but generally you're indoor and you don't think too much about it, other than sometimes if a COVID hits or something where you're worried about getting sick. But kind of walk us through is indoor air quality important? And I assume that it is, given your industry, but why is it important, and kind of what should people consider about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you mentioned something super important there. And I think, for one, I'll speak on behalf of the company, and then kind of on, behalf of the thought process. So COVID, or the pandemic, or whatever anybody would like to call the past couple of years, did one thing that was hugely beneficial, was open people's eyes and, mindsets around what is indoor air quality. What is disinfection? What does it mean? The ramifications of that are these ongoing debates about return to office or having people in a building or working remotely. Everything's super interconnected. And so, the short story of it is that there are a lot more things going on inside of a building than just COVID or the pandemic. And that's one that kind of broadened our scope. We were originally designed for healthcare environments, hospitals, and targeting and lowering hospital-acquired infections, which tragically impact 100,000 mortalities in the U.S. every year. So the company started out really focused on that space to lower that by a couple of percentage points. And we found that the efficacy was much higher than we thought it was. And then, the last couple of years happened, and those verticals obviously expanded to anywhere where people are inside. So retail, transportation, you name it, there's an application that can fit. So I think one thing that's super important about that is it kind of encompasses two things simultaneously, which both air and surface can be two different things. A lot of the things that we encounter in buildings live on surfaces. So you can do things, and we'll talk a little bit about what we kind of set ourselves up against in terms of air disinfection versus surface disinfection. But it's all about having a cleaner indoor environment that doesn't really impact your bottom line and makes life better for your employees and your customers.
No, that makes sense, and sounds like a great reason to address that issue and to focus on it. Now, one of the things that you'd kind of touched on, and like it or not, and want to forget about it or not, COVID, but even just generally a market evolution just happened to me, more recent one that impacted a lot of people or brought it to mind was COVID. But if you're to look and say, okay, when you have, whether it's COVID, whether it's a disruption in the marketplace or anything else, something that is going to be impactful or forces you to change a bit, you have to a lot of times evolve, or you have to change maybe your product offering or how you do it or what you're doing or what the product is, or a lot of those different things. And so when you're kind of faced with that, how do you go about, whether it's changing your messaging, whether it's changing your product, whether it's evolving, kind of any thoughts on how you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are a couple of foundations that every business has to be built on, and tying back into kind of what is the inventive process or what is the journey. Adaptability and flexibility are probably the most important thing in any business, whether that's a marketing function, whether that's a manufacturing operation. Being able to be responsive and agile is probably the greatest success that we've had in the ability to design and build off of something that's a core technology into a different product line. So I would say I'd speak for everyone in our company and probably a lot of different industries when I say the core underlying technology built into different applications. You're dealing with just a classic problem of materials, labor, those types of things, which are challenges in and of themselves. But going back and reinventing the wheel can be difficult. And so I think that a lot of people, and what I see in market trends, is kind of this more modular mentality, where foundations are built off of an underlying technology, and then how does the ecosystem react to that, and being flexible and adaptable to it are super important. That being said, I think one of the things is having a point of view that doesn't waver, something that when you're looking at your business, you don't really change your opinions or your mission. It just kind of adapts and attacks certain things in the environment. Or whatever's happening, whatever the flavor of the day is, but that you are solving a real problem and not just trying to come up with something that addresses a moment, but can be built on over time.
No, makes perfect sense. So with that, walk us through, because in your industry, as you kind of touched on, you were maybe focused a little bit more on hospitals, municipalities, kind of that, and then COVID comes along, disrupts that. Kind of the typical way that people are used to doing business, and probably, you can do one of two things. You hunker down, you wait for things to maybe return back to normal, in quotes, and I don't know what normal is, or you look and say, how do we take this as an opportunity? And so, how did you guys approach that? Did you figure, was it something that you were excited about, or you looked at an opportunity and it was impactful in a good way to your business, or you kind of were forced to it, or kind of what did you guys do to approach and tackle that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. So I'll split that answer in two different directions. One, especially with something like a pandemic or some type of viral outbreak or epidemic or whatever you want to refer to it, um, the healthcare market is the core sector for that. But when they're faced with a crisis, normal buying times, normal process times for sales education and understanding a market and kind of building the rapport with a customer and targeting a specific need, which is in healthcare, I think everybody who's familiar with it knows it has to be tailored down to the facility oftentimes. Um, they were in the middle of a crisis. So it wasn't something that was lack of interest, as they were very busy doing their jobs, which fluctuated over time. When you looked out to the rest of the market, the challenge over the past couple of years has been disruption to everyday life. And wherever anybody stands on that, it's certainly a different world, today than it was 3 to 4 years ago. And so where do we see the biggest impact in that disruption? Well, during the pandemic, education, the K through 12 space was an obvious vertical that had a lot of support from federal funding to address indoor air quality and upgrade as kind of a pairing. How do we make the best out of a bad situation? Because here's what we see in education, and it's true for just about any industry. When you have staff that's out, there are labor shortages. That's not changing. When you're, working in any other kind of industry, the lead times for building products or getting people back into the office or normal sales cycles are very different. But in education specifically, teachers being out, no in-classroom learning, trying to do things over Zoom, I think back to when I was in high school or middle school, not even conceivable for me to be a student who wasn't in the classroom. And so there was a real learning loss impact going on. And so continuous air and surface, pathogen reduction concepts and technologies was something that addressed a real world problem. It kept students and staff healthier. It could help them get back in the building faster where real learning takes place, not over Zoom, where you kind of got, all kinds of different distractions for kids in that age group. And so ultimately what it does is it reduces absenteeism and it keeps infections down. If you think about other parts of a school, athletic facilities, locker rooms, those types of places, buses, are all places that are generally untouched, and they're often subject to what we call periodic treatment. So you would have somebody go in with electrostatic spraying, or maybe you're buying a ton of chemicals that you're spraying. It degrades equipment, and it degrades furniture, and it degrades, kind of material things in our world. And then on top of that, as soon as somebody walks back into that room or that classroom and sneezes, it's done. It has to be disinfected again. So the continuous concept of being, kind of an ever-present technology really can lower the labor cost. It increases the attendance rates of both students and staff, and it actually takes it down on material cost over time. If you took what you were buying for long periods of time, different chemicals over the course of a 12-month or an 18-month budget cycle, it's extensive. So we really think that it was a nice space to be in, and it had really good real world impact.
No, sounds like it. It sounds like it presented you guys with a great opportunity. Now, shifting gears slightly, but I think going along what we had discussed or what you just brought up as well is, so now, as you're in that realm, as you're doing that, especially if you're changing, services is a little bit easier. Not easier in the sense you don't having to change a physical product or manufacturing, but you are certainly still having to change your messaging, still get the business up and running, have the back end and make sure it's all taken care of. But as you're making those updates, particularly on products and maybe a bit of how it's manufactured or who's manufacturing it or what the product is, kind of how do you make those, and or evolve and make those decisions? Because usually it's not a quick turnaround and it's not a cheap process. So how do you go about kind of accounting for that?
Sure. No, it's a really good question. And I think, our answer to that is that the underlying technology was still the same. So the process by which our product works is it uses ambient air to pass through what we call our cell. So it's not a filter, it's not filtration. It's something that creates oxidizing molecules of H2O2 or hydrogen peroxide, which is something you see in everyday life. You go outside, you're exposed to it. And so that technology platform can be housed in a lot of different ways. So we have what we call our duct mounted, which goes into HVAC. products, or we have what we refer to as standalone units that are designed for specific spaces. So we have a ceiling tile unit that replaces a 2x2 up in the ceiling. We have something we call the Casper Compact, and a transit solution, which can be flush or surface mounted in large transit vehicles. So whether that's public transportation, school buses, ambulances. And so getting that core technology built into different housings was critical for us. And so luckily we had done the underlying work on the front end. The same technology applied from healthcare applied to every other space that we were working to be involved with. But the fundamentals of that were having really good manufacturing processes and really good ways to respond and design and quickly get to market different products that fit for different verticals. And the worst thing you can see in any business is somebody taking a product that's not the right fit for the space or not the right fit for a business and trying to apply that in a way that wasn't intentionally designed for. Luckily, we were able to be flexible enough to adapt our product lines and get them into spaces that were, one, aesthetically pleasing, and two, had a really high efficacy rate. So the efficacy across the product lines is very similar. It just depended on what the buyer or what somebody who was looking to disinfect a space was looking for.
Well, sounds like definitely you guys took the opportunity. You had a lot of the foundation and the building blocks in place. And I think that, if we were to broaden that out a bit, a lot of times within a business, trying to anticipate, what are those foundational building blocks that allow you to be flexible, to allow you to address the market evolutions and those ongoing concerns can set you up for success and make sure everything works out well as things evolve and change within the business. So, well, now as we're already wrapping towards the end of the episode, and it feels like things have flown by, and there are still plenty of things that we could hit on. So we'll have to have you back on hopefully in the future to one of our sister podcasts. But as we wrap up today, I always like to wrap up with the same question. So we'll jump to that now, which is, within your industry, what is the biggest myth and why is it wrong?
I think that the biggest myth, specifically in our industry, is that filtration can equal disinfection. So you see a lot of people looking to address a problem where something has to pass over a filter in an HVAC system, and the environment is changing very rapidly. So ours goes forward. It's not something that has to be cycled back through the HVAC and back into the building as this cleaned and magic, air that's coming out of the HVAC. It's something that's continuously addressed both in the air and on surfaces. And so that's our biggest challenge, is that the regulatory market is shifting rapidly towards this kind of treatment. Because the misunderstanding is that heavy filtration and those types of things that are kind of, level one use case in an HVAC system are the answer. And we think that they're great, they're components of it, and they're obviously work for large particulates. But we think that you can build a system that's multi-tiered and addresses multiple different levels of indoor spaces.
Awesome. Well, definitely makes sense. A good myth to dispel, and a great takeaway. So awesome. Well, now we are wrapping up the episode. If people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
We'll take all the above. I'm on LinkedIn fairly often, and our website is caspertech.com. My email is matt@caspertech.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, make a new connection. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Matt, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all the listeners that are out there, you can help us to share this expertise with even more startups and small businesses. Just go to the podcast and leave us a review or share it. And definitely helps us to reach more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help along your journey with patents or trademarks or anything else for your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Matt, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you.